Two deputies, Riley Voss and Carter Dunn, both in their late 20s and cocky as roosters, lounged near the back, trading smirks. "Check out Mr. Wall Street," Voss muttered, nudging Dunn. "Bet he's got a rap sheet longer than my arm. Thinks a suit's gonna save him." Dunn snorted, loud enough to draw a glance from the bailiff. It was a miserable Wednesday morning in Blackthorn County, Oregon, the kind of day where the rain didn't just fall, it clung to your bones like a bad memory. The courthouse in downtown Ashwood was nothing to write home about. Chipped oak paneling, linoleum floors worn thin by decades of dragging feet, and a stale whiff of burnt coffee and damp paper. The kind of place where small-town dramas played out and were forgotten before the next case was called. But on April 9th, 2025, something walked into that courtroom that didn't belong. A man who wasn't about to let his story get buried under the hum of fluorescent lights. His name was Darius Kane, 54, though he could have passed for 45 if you ignored the faint silver threading his close-cropped beard. He moved with a quiet intensity, shoulders back, eyes sharp, like a man who'd stared down worse than a pair of handcuffs. His charcoal suit was crisp, no creases, shoes polished to a mirror shine. Not the kind of guy you'd expect to see in chains, but there he was, wrist-bound, standing before a room that had already decided who he was before he opened his mouth. The courtroom was half empty, a smattering of locals and a couple of bored reporters chasing a slow news day. Two deputies, Riley Voss and Carter Dunn, both in their late 20s and cocky as roosters, lounged near the back, trading smirks. "Check out Mr. Wall Street," Voss muttered, nudging Dunn. "Bet he's got a rap sheet longer than my arm. Thinks a suit's gonna save him." Dunn snorted, loud enough to draw a glance from the bailiff. "Probably watched a YouTube lawyer and thinks he's untouchable. Gonna cry when he's back in Orange." They didn't notice the way Darius scanned the room. Not nervous, not defiant, just present. Like he was cataloging every face, every gesture, every word. He stood before Judge Evelyn Carver, a wiry woman in her late 50s with a no-nonsense stare and a reputation for skimming case files faster than she read them. She barely glanced up as the clerk read the charges: obstruction of justice, non-compliance during a traffic stop, and verbal interference with an officer's duties. The air in the room felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to crack. "Mr. Kane," Judge Carver said, her voice flat, "do you have counsel present?" Darius's voice was smooth, steady, like a river running deep. "I'd like to waive that right and represent myself, Your Honor." A ripple of murmurs spread through the gallery. Voss rolled his eyes, whispering, "Here we go. Perry Mason wannabe." Judge Carver raised an eyebrow, studying Darius for the first time. "You sure about that? These charges aren't a parking ticket." "I'm sure," Darius replied, his tone calm but unyielding. The judge shrugged. "Your funeral. Let's hear from the prosecution." Assistant District Attorney Lauren Hayes stood, a 30-something go-getter with a sharp bob and sharper ambitions. She painted Darius as a menace, a man who turned a routine traffic stop into a standoff with his combative attitude and relentless questioning. She claimed he'd refused to exit his vehicle, challenged the officer's authority, and made them fear for their safety. The body cam footage, she noted with a practiced frown, had technical issues, but the officer's written reports were crystal clear. Through it all, Darius stood still, his face unreadable, like he was listening to a bedtime story spun by someone who'd never met him. But something was off. The story was too neat, the charges too convenient. The gallery shifted uncomfortably, eyeing the man in the suit who didn't fit the script. Voss leaned toward Dunn again, not bothering to lower his voice. "Hope he enjoys his suit while it lasts. Orange is his future." Darius turned his head, just enough to lock eyes with them for a split second. The deputies froze, their smirks fading like cheap ink. Outside, the hallway buzzed with gossip. A couple of off-duty cops lingered by a vending machine, chuckling about the mouthy suit guy. Inside, Darius sat at the defense table, hands now free, resting calmly like they belonged to a man discussing the weather, not fighting criminal charges. Voss and Dunn had moved closer to the front, their smugness practically a third presence in the room. The bailiff, a grizzled man named Pete, leaned toward them. "You two nabbed him, right?" "Yup," Voss said, popping his gum like it was a punctuation mark. Guy's a real scholar. Kept asking for our badge numbers, quoting some nonsense about department policy. Thought he was running the show. Dunn grinned. Yeah, kept saying, "You're out of line, I'm filing this." Like he's got a law degree stashed in his glove box. Pete chuckled. They always crumble when the judge isn't buying it. In the gallery, a woman sat alone, unnoticed by most. Nora Jackson, early 40s, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes locked on Darius. She hadn't moved since the hearing started, her hands folded in her lap, a quiet intensity matching his. She wasn't here by accident. Hayes wrapped her opening with a flourish, reiterating the officer's professional restraint in the face of Darius's hostility. Then it was his turn. He rose slowly, buttoned his jacket, and stepped forward like he was about to deliver a TED Talk, not defend his freedom. "Your Honor," he began, his voice clear and deliberate. "A traffic stop doesn't grant officers a blank check to bend the truth or escalate without cause. I'd like to set the record straight." Judge Carver frowned. "Keep it relevant, Mr. Kane." "Oh, I will," he said, a hint of steel in his tone. He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping past the officer's smirks. "I was pulled over on Highway 17 at 5:47 p.m. The stated reason? My license plate light was flickering. Not out, not broken, flickering. I asked for clarification on the violation. I asked if I was being detained or free to go. I requested badge numbers. I informed them I was recording." Voss snorted, but Darius didn't flinch. "They demanded I exit my vehicle. I asked what law required me to do so for a flickering light. I wasn't refusing. I was seeking clarity. Then I was yanked from my car, slammed against the hood, and cuffed. My phone hit the pavement. One officer, won't name names yet, told me to stop playing lawyer and take it like a man." The room went still. Even Judge Carver leaned forward, her pen pausing. The deputies' grins were gone, replaced by tight jaws. Darius's voice dropped, heavy with sarcasm. "Funny how a flickering light turned into obstruction of justice. Funny how asking questions makes you a threat." He sat down, the silence deafening. Voss whispered to Dunn, "Guy's got a script, but it's not going to save him." But then Nora stood, slow and deliberate, pulling a sealed envelope from her bag. She handed it to Pete without a word and sat back down. Every eye followed that envelope like it was a live grenade. Judge Carver took it, her eyes narrowing. "What's this?" Pete glanced at it. "Addressed to the court, Your Honor. From the Department of Homeland Security." The gallery buzzed. The stenographer's fingers hovered. Carver slit the envelope, pulled out a letter with an official seal, and read silently. Her eyebrows twitched, then her mouth tightened. She looked at Darius. "Mr. Kane, care to explain?" He stood, his voice steady but laced with a dark edge. "That letter confirms I was operating under a sealed directive from Homeland Security issued 4 weeks ago. I'm the acting director of a special task force auditing law enforcement interactions in rural counties like Blackthorn, following a surge in civilian complaints about misconduct." The room imploded. Gasps, whispers, chairs creaking. Voss's face drained of color, like he'd just seen his career flash before his eyes. Dunn blinked rapidly, as if trying to wake up. Darius continued, his tone cutting like a blade. "I wasn't just pulled over. I was profiled. I asked questions any citizen has the right to ask. I followed protocol, recorded everything, and still ended up in cuffs. Why? Because I didn't fit their script." Judge Carver's voice was tight. "Is there evidence?" "Cloud sync footage from my personal device," Darius said, "plus surveillance from a gas station across the street. It's all in federal custody now. Matches every word I've said." Hayes shot to her feet, flustered. "Your Honor, I wasn't informed of any federal operation. You weren't supposed to be." Darius cut in, his voice dripping with irony. "The point was to see how officers act when they think no one's watching." Carver's gaze shifted to Voss and Dunn. Officers stepped forward. They rose like men walking to their own execution, their earlier swagger gone. The judge's voice was ice. "I don't care who you thought he was. I care that your report smells like fiction. I care that you sat here, smirking while a federal agent was charged with crimes you invented." Voss opened his mouth, but Carver's hand shot up. "Save it. You'll talk to Homeland Security now. Darius sat down, his face unreadable. Nora's eyes glistened, but she didn't move. She'd been with Homeland Security for 15 years, the one who'd flagged Blackthorn for the audit after a string of buried complaints. This was personal for her, not just a job, but a reckoning. The next morning, the courthouse was a circus. News vans lined the street, cameras flashing as locals whispered about the mystery defendant. Voss and Dunn sat in the back, silent, their faces carved from stone. Judge Carver entered, her expression grim, and got straight to it. "We've reviewed the footage," she said, her voice heavy. "It shows a man asking lawful questions, offering no resistance, and being treated with escalating aggression until he was forcibly arrested. The officer's report doesn't match reality." The gallery held its breath. Carver turned to Hayes. "Ms. Hayes." Hayes stood, her confidence shattered. "Your Honor, I move to dismiss all charges against Mr. Kane. I'll also file for a review of the officer's conduct." Carver nodded. "Wise move, because this court won't tolerate fabricated reports." She looked at Darius. "Mr. Kane, on behalf of this court, I apologize. You shouldn't have been here." Darius tilted his head, silent. He didn't need her words. He'd already won. Then came the twist. As Carver prepared to adjourn, Pete approached the bench, holding another envelope. "Your Honor, this was just delivered. Marked urgent." Carver frowned, opened it, and froze. Her eyes darted to Darius, then back to the letter. Mr. Kane approached the bench. He did, his expression unreadable. The gallery leaned forward, straining to hear. Carver lowered her voice. "This letter claims you weren't just auditing Blackthorn. It says you were investigating a broader conspiracy involving this department and a local cartel. Is that true?" The room didn't just go silent. It felt like the air was sucked out. Darius's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Your Honor, that's classified. But I can say this. Blackthorn's issues run deeper than 2 deputies with bad attitudes. My team's been tracking patterns. Missing evidence, dismissed complaints, officers living above their pay grade. Last night, we intercepted a shipment linked to this department. Check the federal database. You'll find it." Carver's face paled. She turned to the bailiff. "Clear the courtroom. Now." By noon, Blackthorn was a ghost town of whispers. The news broke. Darius Kane wasn't just a federal agent. He'd uncovered a web of corruption tying the sheriff's department to a drug-running operation. Voss and Dunn weren't just bad cops. They were small players in a bigger game. The intercepted shipment, $2 million in cocaine, had been stashed in a deputy's barn, tipped off by Darius's team. The community erupted. A town hall that weekend drew hundreds, led by a local activist, Reverend Clara Tate. People shared stories of harassment, arrests without cause, evidence lost in custody. A mother stood, tears streaming, and said, "My daughter was framed last year. They said she resisted, just like Mr. Kane, but she didn't have a badge to save her." Darius didn't attend. He was in a nondescript office in Portland, sipping black coffee, reviewing files with Nora and his supervisor, Director Lena Morrow. "You could have blown your cover," Morrow said, half admiring, half scolding. "Why didn't you flash your badge at the stop?" Darius shrugged. "Because that's not the point. The point is what happens when you're just a guy asking questions. That's what I was fighting for." Morrow handed him a new file. "Next stop's Idaho. Bigger fish, dirtier water. You in?" He didn't hesitate. "Always." Back in Blackthorn, the sheriff resigned, his press conference a masterclass in empty promises. Voss took a job as a mall cop, his smirk replaced by a 1,000-yard stare. Dunn left town, his name poisoned in every job application. Judge Carver started reviewing old cases, her desk piled with files bearing the same deputies' names. She showed up at a community meeting, not to speak, but to listen, a first in her 20 years on the bench. 3 months later, Darius returned to Blackthorn, not for work, but for Nora. She'd invited him to a community center event, where kids had painted a mural honoring the man who didn't burn. He stood in the crowd, anonymous in jeans and a hoodie, watching a teenage girl unveil the artwork, a figure in a suit, standing tall against the storm. After, Nora walked him to his car. "You changed this place," she said. "They're listening now." He smiled, soft and real. "Not enough, but it's a start." She hesitated. "You ever think about slowing down? You got a desk job waiting." He looked at the mural, then at her. "Desks don't fix what's broken. People do." "But," he paused, his voice softening, "I'm thinking about taking a weekend off. Maybe 2. Got a spot in mind." Her eyes lit up. "I know a cabin by the coast. No badges, no files, just waves." He grinned. "Sold." As he drove off, the mural glowed under the streetlights. A reminder that some fires don't destroy, they illuminate. Blackthorn wasn't fixed, but it was awake. And Darius Kane, the man they didn't see coming, was already on his way to the next fight, with a little sweetness waiting on the horizon. The story of Darius Kane in Blackthorn County, Oregon, is more than a courtroom drama or a gotcha moment. It's a raw, unfiltered look at how assumptions, power, and systemic flaws collide in ways that can break people or spark change. If you enjoy this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more inspiring and informative Black stories. Also comment where you're watching from, and let's all connect.